my gosh, you guys, what a morning. We're here at the MEA Leadership Conference where Mo and Frank, founders of Culture Plus, were our keynote kickoff speakers. I mean,
wow.
Mind blown. I mean, really, we don't...
A fan favorite for sure.
Yeah, we don't usually sit in, especially the law conference.
People are going to hear this.
We won't tell anybody.
People are going to hear this.
Well, we don't normally sit in.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's being honest. You do not. Anyway, really unbelievable. Your journey, your story, your transparency, your success, both personally and your business. I love it. The book is Love as a Business Strategy. Talk to us, highlights about sort of this journey for you.
Yeah, I think I can start. So essentially, the book, Love as a Business Strategy, was written because of a journey that our organization went on. Software was the name of the company, and I'm the founder and CEO of the company, and I had a tremendous success, running the company, and I started it at age 20. And that success quickly was about to turn into a bankruptcy story. And I realized in the deep moment of introspection that this is because of my fault. I was incredibly selfish, greedy, and I cared only about doing things my way. And I had created an environment of fear. And that's what truly almost destroyed our business. Fortunately, I was lucky enough or blessed to have realized that I'm the one who needed to change in order to save the company. And I was able to learn of the culture of love from an American football game I witnessed. And I decided to try and experiment bringing that culture into the walls of our organization. And that literally saved our business. And as a result of that, our business went from barely surviving to thriving. And next thing you know, we have clients, customers from Fortune 50 companies asking us, hey, can you help us with culture? Can you help us with our leaders? And we're like, that's not what we do. And they're like, we know. That's why it's so refreshing. We need someone who doesn't do it to come and tell our leaders how to behave. And so we got on this journey of teaching leaders around the world how to lead with love. And that gave way to our book, Love as a Business Strategy. And since then, we've been traveling around the world, speaking about love as a business strategy and our journey and how it can impact the corporate workplace to bring back humanity.
You know, as you were talking about that, this journey is just fascinating. And, you're so clearly vulnerable in that sort of discussion. We hear a lot, or we talk, it's not uncommon that the leader of a startup is hard to work for, right? You're building something.
Right.
And we call that a lot founder syndrome, right? Like, you could start it, but you gotta go, right? Yeah. And so this transformation, I'm just like, I'm fascinated by. And so certainly, Frank, you've been there for Mo 1.0. And
yeah, Mo 1.0 was there, and then now we're Mo 3.4.7.2, something like that.
Well, Frank, you're tracking with the iPhone, I thought, right? Like that's how
Mo iOS 17 is the new iOS. But, in regards to what you were talking about founder syndrome, most of the time, the individual's DNA is so interwoven within the way that their company has been founded, right? I think a lot of that was true for Muhammad and starting up this business and even starting it from a family perspective. But as a result of trying to be as successful as possible by learning from what other large organizations did to succeed, he began to let some of those family values dissipate. And what was replaced was that Mo 1.0 that we all experienced. And so when he first started his company, I think it's fair to say, it was very much a family kind of dynamic. But that quickly gave way to you saying, we need more rigid structures. I need to do this, this, and this. And that created that environment that was toxic, essentially.
Why did you stay?
So my wife asked me the same question. Okay, especially more than once. Especially as we were going through this downturn and coming out of that. What a lot of people didn't know that was happening behind the scenes is Muhammad sold his fully paid off home and put that money back into the company. He sold the Porsche that he had purchased previously and put that money back into the company. And he stop taking a salary. And so one day, a few months after we got on this journey, he had started his journey, I got a handwritten note from Mo. And in it said, "Hey, Frank, I know the time and energy you've been putting into this and the work that we're doing to try to save this company. And I know that you haven't spent a lot of time with your family. And so I want to give you some money to go take them and do something with them." And it was $100. And very few people knew that Muhammad had no salary, had sold his home and his car. And that money that he gave me was from him personally. And it was because he wanted me to spend time with my family. And I thought, this is the leader I want to lead alongside. This is the person who I want to commit to. And that was one of those moments where I said, I'm in it. I'm for sure in it. Because I experienced that moment and I thought, I mean, why would I not want to give this a chance?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So anybody that has seen you speak, they know that you guys are fun. I mean, love is a business strategy, but you have also brought
It's a fun time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we were talking this morning. Frank, you told me a funny story about Mo 1.0 and Mo, your new Mo, right? And you don't have to repeat that one, but is there a funny story that you can share that really also highlights the change?
I would love to share one. And Muhammad loves this, as you can tell by his demeanor and body language. It is. Can
I start?
He's got to start.
He wants to pitch a story.
He's got to start. You know, we already know where we're going with this.
Okay.
So it's going to be juicy. Go for it.
Okay.
So when we were going through the turbulent times, I was a leader who, if I wanted to have a meeting, everybody had to get together. It was like, I want a meeting right now this afternoon in 30 minutes, and people would have to show up. So similarly, one day I decided I wanted to meet my entire leadership team on the whim. I set up a meeting in the morning. At 10 a.m., I set up a meeting for 2 p.m. and I sent out an invite. I said, everybody better show up. We're going to have a serious conversation. So 2 o'clock comes around. Everybody started rolling into the meeting. People are rolling in late to the meeting. I'm getting triggered. I'm getting really upset.
Getting frustrated.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's one person missing. I'm like, where the hell is Frank? It's like 2:10, 10 minutes in, Frank hasn't shown up. And I'm like, okay, how much longer am I going to wait? And during this whole time, I kept like disparaging Frank. I was like, Frank is a lazy guy. He doesn't know how to manage his time. He's probably hasn't even like realized he's missing a meeting. He's like this.
He's just totally close with Frank.
All of our leadership.
Frank is dead to me.
Everyone.
He's done.
So I'm
Not
like,
kidding.
yeah. So I'm like saying all these things.
Okay.
And eventually I'm like, okay, I've had it. I got out of the seat and I went to his office, which is on the other side of the building. And and he was in there. I could see his window was there.
Working at the computer, you know?
And I barged in and I said, Frank, what the F?
And
Why is your ASS not in the room
Spelling
right
it out.
now? How dare you not come to my meeting? Get your and let's go back. Right?
The volume was at 11. Like he was definitely.
was out
The
of
calm version.
And that was, this is Mo 3.4 point something. But like
I want to see it.
he literally, how do we get him back there?
But we don't have a bleeper, so you can't actually hear us.
Exactly.
We don't
He
have a
was-
bleeper function.
Exactly. So when he came in the room, and that was the only time that Muhammad has ever like straight up yelled at me. The only time I had experienced like the wrath essentially. And after that,
Yeah, and then I told him, follow me, let's go.
and I was
So he just picked up his stuff and
you know, the
followed
Charlie
me,
Brown
go
walk,
sit in.
the sad kind of walk, and then I sat down, didn't say anything, and I
Meeting got over, everything was done, and then
So real quick, I'm sorry. I just have to know. You probably want to know too. Did you have a good reason for being
Yeah,
late?
why were you late?
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, good. I thought you were going to.
We are
all the
impatient.
questions shall be
We're
answered.
not impatient. We're just
So-
curious.
so no,
You gotta be
somehow
curious.
managed to run the meeting, finished it, and then later that evening I get an invite from Frank for a one-on-one for the next morning
Yeah.
in the way corner of the office where usually people have quit. This is where people meet me to say,
Oh, the quit room.
It's the quit room.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quit room.
Yeah. Well, it does now.
It does now. We just coined it.
It's a quit room, and he made you do it the
Yes.
next day to see you could
yeah.
ruminate on
So the whole night I was like, damn it, I think I did. I think I just overdid it. You know, but it was justified. He wasn't there. I still justified everything. And
It's a
then the
family
next
show.
morning, I walk into the room and I was late.
2 minutes. Nobody's counting, but 2 minutes.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
Yes.
If you're not early, you're late.
Yeah. So I sit down, and I could see Frank had a notebook. He had some notes in it, and he was visibly shaking.
Like a leaf.
Visibly, he was like this, and he was like really, and I was like, I think I just said, yeah, so what's up or something.
Yeah, dude, just super, yeah, what's going on? What's happening? I'm like, I would like to talk to you.
And then Frank says, I'd like to share something with you. And he looks at his notebook and he starts
whole time
reading.
Yep.
He doesn't look in my eyes. Reads and he says, I just want you to know, I do not appreciate being yelled at like that. And I do not want to be treated like that. And he is shaking and his voice is trembling when he's telling me this. I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
And then later he's like, I also want to show you something else.
Well, first of all, you apologized after that. And you said...
I tried to justify it.
You did justify it. He was like, yeah, but, I need people. And he went out to I need people to show up. I need people to be a part of that. I'm like, I know, I understand. And then I said, hey, also, I just want to show you something. And I turn the laptop around and I show him that I wasn't invited to the meeting.
That's what I was thinking it was going to be.
I had forgotten to invite him on the calendar invite.
I mean, that's the best. I'm sorry, but oh my God, that's so
I was
good.
so
Why did you
bad.
lead with that, Frank?
So I was, because I wanted to get my thoughts out
this is true.
and just kind of start with, hey, this is how it made me feel. This is the experience. And then in that moment, I said, I also want you to understand I wasn't even invited to it, right? And so that's why I was so shocked when he barged into the office, because I was just working. I was sending an email or doing something with chat. And it was definitely one of those specific pinpoint moments that recognizes how far, honestly, you've come, as well as a leader recognizing that.
So what did you do?
And I apologized eventually. Eventually I did. And that moment I just realized, oh crap, I have no way escaping this. Like, there's no justification for this. Like, I just needed to own it up and apologize. It was hard as hell to apologize. I won't lie.
Yeah.
It's difficult as well because I'm like embarrassed. I've been an asshole. Sorry. I have to get these.
Right. That's all right. We have adult listeners and learners.
So eventually I had to own it. But I also really, really appreciated the grace and the way that Frank approached me, because he could have quit, could have resigned, he could have told me F you and walked out the door, but he chose to take the high road and give me the feedback I deserved to hear, despite my intimidating demeanor. And,
it was terrifying.
And he forgave me. And I think that meant so much to me that I could then go on a journey of realizing that I need to be a better leader. I need to be a better human. But also I know I need people like Frank around me to give me the feedback and help me see myself in ways I've never seen, and also be practicing grace with me.
I want to ask a question. You've shared with us how your real transformation in your leadership style and your outlook on the world, really, if you think about it, changed your business. How has it changed your life and your personal life?
Tremendously. It's made a night and day difference. And it's totally true when we say, like, you're not two different people. You don't have your work version and your personal version. You're the same person. When you show up to work, you're the same Mohammed, right? And we try so hard to distinguish work and life and, my professional life and my personal life. And the reality is, at the end of the day, that's too tasking emotionally, mentally, and it's too stressful to try and put two faces. And so I've learned to embrace just who I am. I'm like this at work and at home, and I had to understand that I'm one person, and my emotional reactions I have at work are the same reactions I was having with my wife, with my kids, my siblings, with my parents, with the waiter, with the traffic. Traffic's maybe a little different, but I've now seen myself like responding to situations that in the past I would have had a reaction. Now I'm like, well, let me think about that. Let me respond and not react, and let me be appreciative of this opportunity that I have and look for the good and the bad instead of always focusing on the bad. Look for the goodness in people instead of their weaknesses. So it's like changed my whole perspective of the world. I find love everywhere I go now. I find love in this conversation. I find love in being able to speak and the questions that people ask. And it's like changed my whole, like it's like somebody took a shade off and put another shade on. And I know it didn't happen overnight, but it feels like it's a night and day difference. And it's made me far more content, far more happier. I'm not as rich as I used to be, but that's okay. I'm rich in love and the people around me, and having people like Frank and my team, people who support us like you all. It's worth it.
It's huge. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think our lives have been impacted incredibly, not just Mohammed's personal journey. If you ask his wife, we were talking about this on the drive here, that our relationships with our wives are the best they've ever been. And he's going on, is it 17 years just now?
Yes,
17?
Completed my 17th.
17 years, 15 years for me in February. And so we've got this remarkable adoption into our own like personal lives, right? Where I'm able to bring what I'm learning and what I'm sharing with people to my home and be a more loving husband. And the policies and the way we've transformed our organization has given time back to people to spend time with their families and to be able to do both, right? And that's why we talk about putting people at the center of business decisions, because that's the priority. And for us, we've seen an increase in our productivity, an increase in people's willingness to be a part of it, an increase for giving their all when they recognize what we're trying to do inside of the organization, and the goodwill that we share is also kind of reimbursed back as a...
And hence the name Cultural Plus.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to work in a culture like that? And be a part of that and get to experience that all the time. So that's awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
We loved having you here today. And
Can't wait to see more.
yeah.
We're very excited.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for having us.
Aaron Hughes of Haverford Trust. Thank you for joining Holly and I today.
Oh, it's always fun to be with you.
Thank you for saying that. So we're here at the Leadership Conference. So I thought I'd ask you about development for leaders. And I know that you know, right, that leadership is a journey. Our ability to grow and improve as leaders is something that we should always be working on, always be learning. So with that in mind, what's the best thing that you've done? How have you grown? Or what is the single best experience that you've had as a leader?
Learning about the brain.
The brain. So tell us more.
Well, people cannot respond rationally, coherently. Sorry, I'm not doing this well. People cannot think clearly if their amygdalas have been triggered.
They're amygdalas.
Amygdala, motion center of the brain. When you flip your lid, it's because your amygdala is going off, right?
I've heard it phrased as a hijacking. Of
Yes,
the
amygdala hijack.
Yep.
Mhm. So I think that it has informed the way that I lead and teach other people to lead, because when you're dealing with people who are super emotional or afraid or defensive, it's really difficult for them to be rational, logical. And so if someone's flipped their lid, you need to give them time to get themselves back together, maybe revisit the conversation later. I think that it's changed the way I think about leadership. I always describe myself as a leader as industrious, courageous, loving. And I probably earlier in my career put more emphasis on the industrious and the courageous. But since learning more about the field of neuroscience, I have been focusing more on the loving part of leading and managing people, because people have brains and brains have amygdalas. And if people are feeling upset about some change that's going to impact the way they work, then, no list of protocols is going to be able to mitigate that anxiety.
Great answer. So I think we can all agree that the past 3.5 years has been we've seen the most workplace changes, right? From where we work, how we work, technology, AI, supply chain challenges. I could go on forever. With all this change, the workplace has had to change, and as have our leadership styles. How has your leadership style adapted or changed to this new world of work?
I have become deliberately much more patient with people. So again, my former thoughts about leadership were that I had to be tough, make the decisions others were afraid to make, say the things that others were afraid to say. And with what we've gone through in the past 3 years, I have found myself becoming softer and more patient and allowing people to come to conclusions on their own, to look at the data, develop their own interpretations, propose alternate interpretations, and then let people marinate in the thought process and propose their own solutions. Whereas before, I think I was more inclined to fix it quick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what just occurred to me is, in the time that I've known you, Erin, I would say that my impression always of you is that you're very Zen-like. Like, you are very calm. I think whatever you're doing to be more patient, to be more loving, it like kind of like exudes out of you, right? There is this calmness, this peacefulness about you that is really inviting.
And comfort.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
You know, my mother used to make us, when we were bad, when we were kids, she would make us sit on a stool in the living room where you couldn't touch anything, even if you like stuck your foot out. And you had to sit there until you said 5 nice things.
Oh.
And if you were mean to somebody, it had to be 5 nice things about them.
Ooh.
And it could not be they passed first grade, they passed second grade, passed it. It had to be genuinely nice things about them. And I think that has stuck with me, and that I can be pretty good at finding really good things about lots of other people. But I do think as I've aged, I've gotten better at showing that as a leader.
And we heard from one of our speakers earlier today about not making the assumption that they're trying to do something negative. They're trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
And
Assume
so,
good thoughts.
right, assume good intention, right?
Yes.
Assume that they think it was a good decision.
Yep.
And that's kind of part and parcel with that sort
Yep.
of philosophy of say 5 good things about them,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
See,
Awesome.
it shifts the whole thinking too, and puts you into that mindset that, oh, they are a good person and this is good, and it's not them, it's the situation.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So see, your mother taught you something.
She did. She taught me well.
All right, so quick question for you. We know that, as I said before, like leadership is a journey. We're
Yep.
all on this journey, and there are road bumps on this road, right? We all at times make mistakes. What do you think is the greatest mistake that leaders make?
I think the greatest mistake leaders make is particularly when they're new to an organization or a team or new to a leadership role, maybe at the same place, and they don't pay homage to people and culture. So what a really good new leader does, in my opinion, is surveys everybody in the team and the company, has individual conversations with them about their take on the company, the challenges, the things to be celebrated, and holds them up as the existing pillars of the culture and the community. People need to do that before they institute change.
Yeah.
So, play devil's advocate here. You suggest this to a new leader, and they say, I don't have time for that. Because there is such a time pressure, and so many managers, leaders do feel that. How are you going to tell that individual? How are you going to express really the worth of doing this?
You skip that step at your peril.
Wow. That's kind of a strong statement. I
Yep.
think I get the message.
Game of Thrones. Man.
Yep.
We were just telling you were very soft and loving before.
And so when a soft, loving person says that,
Right,
listen.
you listen. Right.
Wow.
When Aaron Hughes talks, you listen.
Skip that step at your peril.
Because like, people don't feel seen and valued by the person who's newly in leadership of them, above them, then they feel threatened and look at their backup.
And they certainly don't trust.
Absolutely.
They will not trust you. Yeah. So, in this ever-changing world of work, what tips do you have for leaders? What tips do you have for aspiring leaders, if you would?
I would say think strategically and think ahead. So it's one thing to get into a leadership position and try and make sure that everything is currently running efficiently, practices and protocols and policies are all in place and being honored. But it's another thing to think about where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as an organization and as a team. And I think they should always be thinking ahead of what's next, what they're going to grow into, particularly with technology changing as quickly as it is now.
Right.
Where they're going,
Right.
where the team needs to go, where the pain points are.
Yeah.
What's the mission, vision, and value of the team, and how are you going to live that out in the future so that you exist?
And step out of that moment, right?
Yep.
Like managing is the moment.
Yep.
We manage the moment, but we lead the future.
Yep.
I just made that up.
That was
Oh my God, that was good.
So during the podcast, we impress ourselves.
So much. It's embarrassing.
All right, so we're here with Lisa Sickle from Icona. Thank you so much, Lisa, for talking to Holly and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Welcome.
thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
It's truly my pleasure.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. So we're at our leadership conference.
Yes.
So I need to ask you about leadership development. And we know leadership, right, developing and growing as a leader, it's a journey. It's not a one and done. We have to keep doing it. I'm sure it's something that you've done over the years. So when you think about all that you've done to develop and to grow, what's been the most rewarding or the most helpful? Is there an experience or something that you've made a point to start doing? What would you say it is?
So really, it's the culture in which I work in now. So I've been with my company for 7 years. And very early into my career, and we're in the hospitality space, there was an issue with bartenders who were giving away free drinks because the patron was bringing them meatball sandwiches. And so we discovered 3 of them that were doing this. So the CEO of the company and myself wanted to speak to him, but the CEO was going to lead the conversation. And instead of yelling at them, berating them, or any of those things, they said, "Gentlemen, I want to teach you a life lesson. Don't be taken advantage of by somebody." And so nobody was terminated. It gave them food for thought. And I turned to him after the meeting and I said, "You're going to teach me a new way of doing business." And he's like, "I hope I do."
Chills. I
yeah.
totally just got chills.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's truly. And
That's modeling.
yeah. And so, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father had supermarkets, liquor stores, and it was a very old school kind of do as I say, as you were talking about.
Command and control.
Right. And so, I learned that very well. I cut my teeth on that, right? And to see this different model of, understanding and really grooming people as human beings as opposed to a business tactic or strategy was really impactful and put me on a different trajectory.
Excellent example of taking the coach approach, right?
Yes.
The coach as leader, see this as an opportunity to help them grow and develop and learn
Yes.
instead of punish.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's such a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, certainly you know this better than most, being in the hospitality industry, but we've seen just a world of chaos in the past three and a half years.
I know.
It feels almost like an understatement.
Yeah, it's all.
Almost doesn't feel.
Yeah, I mean, especially for hospitality. I mean, we've had talent. I mean, first, the obvious, right?
Yes.
The shutdown, and then the extra cleaning challenges and sanitation that you've all had, and then staff shortages, and I could go on and on and on,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So lots of workplaces had to adapt, and that always means that leadership has to adapt.
Yes.
How have you adapted your style in the past 3.5 years?
So we have always had processes, but now the processes have taken a higher lead in what we do because people need to be clear about what they need to do.
Clear as kind.
And then the second thing is empathy. Even though it's part of our culture and it's on our culture card, we've really had to be more empathetic with one another than we ever had to be before. Everybody had a different challenge through that pandemic. I consider myself definitely one of the fortunate ones, right? But I was getting calls, desperate calls from the team members as we're working from home. I don't know what to do. And and sometimes I was just sitting on the phone for an hour, just listening to somebody, right? But they're part of our team. And so it was really empathy started to naturally come out in us before we even identified we were being empathetic. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think empathy is probably maybe, 1 and 2 for the processes, because the processes were equally as important. This is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it.
Interesting, right?
Having a process also brings comfort to people.
Yes, structure.
Especially in such times of uncertainty, when there is that structure, when they when they know, all right, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
It does bring comfort to that and security.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
awesome. So, mentioned earlier, leadership's the journey, and that journey sometimes can be a little bumpy.
Yes. I didn't come through a straight line. I don't know about anybody else, but my career was on a straight line.
Sometimes probably a road bump or whatever. So, when you think about all the mistakes that leaders make, and we all make them, and honestly, we need to make them because that's how we learn, that's how we grow.
Sure.
What do you think is the greatest mistake that leaders make?
I think probably is a failure to communicate clearly. I think clear communication is key. And I think leaders really need to buy into what they're doing. So as our CEO says, because he used to be in the card business before he decided to go into the hospitality space, if there's a question in the seller's mind, there'll be a question in the buyer's mind. So as leaders, we have to really have a deep dive and believe in what we're doing, and then be able to communicate that clearly.
I like that. Question in the seller's mind, there's going to be a question in the buyer's mind.
Yes.
So, tips that you have for aspiring leaders in this new world of work?
I think one is clear communicators, right? You really need to have clear communication skills. And if you want to be a leader, you should probably practice some public speaking, right?
Yeah.
And if you can sort of, really understand the audience and what you're speaking with. And then the second thing I would say is really that listening. You were talking about the act of listening. I learn more every time I sit in a director's meeting or whatever when I'm quiet and I'm just listening and I'm hearing what they're saying, where the CEO is talking about this and then they interject that, and I'm like, I think we've missed our point here, right? We're not all on the same road together. Clear communication and then strong listening.
Clear is kind, and we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? Excellent. Elisa, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you in person.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Our pleasure, Sally said, for sure.
Michelle, thank you for joining us. We are at our leadership conference, and Michelle Gloviak from Marion Cricket Club has agreed to sit and talk with us. Welcome. Thank you for sitting down.
Thank you so much for having me. Awesome. All right. Oh, that's right. I'm on. Okay. So I have a question. So you're at our leadership conference, which I love that you're here. I hope you're enjoying it so far.
Absolutely.
So leadership is a journey. We all know that, right? And we know that the best leaders really approach it that way. It's not a one and done. It's something I'm constantly going to be learning and growing and finding ways to do that. So when you think about your journey and what you've done, what's been the best experience that you've had in your development, or it was an experience or something that, like, conversation, whatever? What would you say has been most valuable from a learning standpoint for you?
I think you said it best. It is a journey, and it's not just one event or one situation. It's the culmination of all of those experiences added up together. It's the good, it's the bad, it's cherry picking. This is what I want to be like. This is what I don't want to be, right? And that's how I have become the leader that I am today.
So being really intentional is what I'm hearing. Like making a decision. Here's how I want to show up. Here's who I want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great.
And learning from others.
Yeah, making a good situation out of a bad situation. May have been a bad situation for me, but I'm going to learn from it and adapt and be a better leader for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of a bad situation, I would say that,
That was a great segue.
I'm getting better at this.
I'm figuring this out.
So what was my segue? Oh, speaking of a bad situation, I think we can all agree that the past 3.5 years have been pretty tumultuous, particularly in the workplace. And, you're certainly in the hospitality space. From shortages of, the shutdown, shortages, not enough employees, et cetera, supply chain issues, et cetera. Our businesses had to adapt. They had to adjust and adapt. So too have our leadership styles. How would you say your leadership style has adapted in the last 3.5 years or so?
Well, it's been a bumpy road, but I think that someone said to me one time that those who are flexible are never bent out of shape.
Oh,
And I take that so seriously. I get that. It speaks to me, right? So as you said, everything is changing and even at a more rapid pace than it ever has before. So we need to learn to be comfortable in that change, right? Because change is difficult for everyone. So being flexible, because we know it's going to be different tomorrow.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, God, yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned that bumpy road.
Yes.
And it is a bumpy road. And leading people it's a journey. And sometimes it's smooth sailing. And sometimes, like you said, it's that bumpy road. So when you think about that, what would you say? And I know you didn't make any mistakes. But when you think about the mistakes that leaders make, what would you say is the greatest mistakes that leaders could make?
I think that it's trying to do too much too soon, right? So as we talk about change is hard, right? We're human beings. We don't like change. No, and some of us are more comfortable with it than others. But taking a step back and observing for a little while, getting to know who your team is at their core, not just, what they say their title is, right? Trying to go in and make changes right away and not getting to know the situation or the people. I think it's a mistake that I have made. I think it's probably a mistake most leaders do make because you want to prove yourself. You're like, oh, I'm new at this. I want to prove to everyone I am the right person for this job, but too much too soon.
I remember when I started at MEA, 10 years ago, which is crazy. When I started at MEA, Kevin, our CEO, said to me, I'm sure you want to change everything. You want to come in here and do everything a different way. Mm-hmm. I want you to just observe for the first 60 days.
Yeah.
And think about how we could do things differently. Because I was brought in to do that, but not right away.
Right.
Because you don't know enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, words of advice from our fearless leader. Yeah. And speaking of advice, God, there I did it again. I am just, speaking of advice, we do compliment ourselves a lot.
I wouldn't say a lot.
But you deserve it. I mean, we're
on me. Thank you. So speaking of advice, what tips do you have for aspiring leaders who are venturing out into this leadership journey in this new sort of world of work?
Yes. And so I feel very awkward about being even asked this question like I know the answer, right? I don't know the answers. I don't know the path. We all just figure it out through trial and error, right? So just knowing that no one knows the answers, but keep learning. You never know everything, right? We keep learning, adapting, changing, and everyone else around us is learning and adapting and changing. And we've got a new generation coming into the workforce, kind of all the time. It's that cycle. So never stop learning, never stop being open-minded to changing or a new perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Michelle, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Thank you
stopping
so
by.
much for having me.
Jack Becker with Supersonic Success. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And let me just let our listeners know a little bit about your background. F-18 fighter pilot.
Yes.
F-18 instructor.
Yes.
20 years at the U.S. Navy.
Correct.
Quite impressive.
Thank you.
Soon to be MEA's closing keynote speaker at our leadership
I'm
conference.
psyched for that.
Yeah, we're really psyched.
We're going to get a little sneak peek into what you have.
So, functional leadership. It's something you and I talked about a little bit. And it's something that you said the Navy uses with their pilots.
Yes. It's something that we've adopted from NASA.
Okay.
And it's great.
So you
that-
borrowed it from
that
them.
We did. NASA behavioral psychologists came up with this idea of functional leaders. And that is very opposite to the designated leader. And that's the leader at the top of the org chart or the boss in the corner office. The functional leader is leadership by knowledge or expertise. And what it means is that it allows for the most qualified person, regardless of where they are on the org chart, to step up, take command of the situation, and meet operational demands. So it allows for sometimes our youngest, most inexperienced person on the org chart that may have a critical piece of information to save the day.
So how does this right? So this is like a culture, basically,
Absolutely.
right? Because people have to know that this is a thing.
Yes.
How do you communicate that to everybody?
So one of the things I like to talk about is the old Top Gun movie, and certainly the new one, Top Gun Maverick, that came out. The only thing really that I see artificial in those movies is the overarching egos that doesn't exist at all in a fighter pilot ready room. It's all about we over me. And how can you help me point out my mistakes so I can make the team better? And so what we're allowing our younger, more inexperienced folks to maybe make a mistake from time to time, but the culture is that's okay because we're all going to learn from it. It may be a mistake that I've made before that I already should have shared with them, or it might be a mistake that I didn't know that now that they highlight it, I'll never make that mistake again. So we keep elevating the performance of the team because we're empowering our functional leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. As I'm listening to you and thinking about sort of bureaucratic, hierarchical business, snooze, and how, in your opinion, how do we translate functional leadership as you just described it, that you participate in with the fighter pilots in the Navy? How do we translate that to business?
I think the best thing we can do, and I'll hit on it in my keynote today, is empower our folks by knowing that mistakes are going to happen. It's the same thing that Frank and Mohammed talked about this morning in their keynote, is that it's okay. What we need to do is not only celebrate our successes, but celebrate our failures as well.
Right.
And I don't want people to hide from them. The worst thing that we can have somebody do is join our team and think, gosh, I made a mistake. You know what? I'm just going to sweep it under the rug.
Right.
Because if they do that, somebody else on our team is doomed to repeat it. Whereas if they highlight it, knowing that the culture is okay, that we're all going to get better for you making this mistake, that's how we can achieve excellence.
Jack, that's best case scenario, right? That it just gets repeated.
For sure.
There's so many worse things that could happen when you make a mistake and then hide it.
Yes.
And I love what you're talking about because it's really, functional leadership tied with psychological safety.
Yes.
You have to make it safe for people to do that.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I love talking about it, but the process works, right? We don't use it sitting in a classroom. This isn't theory. We use it at speeds up to Mach 2 or twice the speed of sound when we're making life and death decisions when things are happening fast. And this works for us, and it can certainly work in an HR setting.
Yeah, sure.
How long did it take for you to adopt? Like, it's great to say, hey, we want to do this, but how long before it actually was?
So it was a huge transformation. And there were certainly dinosaurs in our community who weren't attracted to it and they were shunning it. And fortunately, they kind of either were shunned by the wayside or retired out the top. And now that we don't have to deal with them, because since the day one of me starting to fly in the U.S. Navy, we've been using this culture. So I've been brought up with it my entire time. So I don't know anything different. I've heard from some of the old guard that it was the old grandfathers would fight it. And that you can see where we could really start butting heads, where we're empowering our younger people to speak up, and the old guard doesn't like to be challenged. But fortunately, we've gotten away from that. And now it's all about this relentless pursuit of perfection. We're never going to achieve it, but how can we get better after what we did today? Highlight our successes, highlight our errors, and get better tomorrow.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Can't wait to see your keynote.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
Bye. Thank you for listening. We hope you got a ton of value out of this episode.
Before we go, we want to thank the sponsor of our show, the Mid-Atlantic Employers Association, more commonly referred to as MEA. MEA provides human resources services to hundreds of businesses across numerous industries every day, bridging gaps that restrain innovation and growth.
If you need support around people issues, reach out to meainfo.org. Better people, better outcomes.